In this podcast episode, David A. Williamson shares his extraordinary near-death experiences, NDEs, and how they fundamentally transformed his perception of life, self, and humanity. From a childhood drowning incident to a heart attack decades later, he recounts detailed mystical and spiritual insights, the physiological and psychological challenges he faced, and the profound shift in consciousness that reshaped his relationship with anger, race, and personal identity. The conversation also touches on his ongoing integration of these experiences, their relation to ancient spiritual teachings, and his role as a father, raising a son grounded in love and understanding. David begins by describing his early years in Yanceyville, North Carolina, marked by a deep connection to nature and spiritual sensitivity. As a child, he exhibited lucid dreaming, sleep paralysis, and psychic abilities like hearing thoughts and sensing emotions, which fostered early skepticism towards authority and a fierce drive to understand reality. Books on Gnostic texts and secret teachings of Christ fueled his intellectual curiosity, encouraged by his mother, despite misunderstandings and high costs. At age 6, David's near-fatal drowning at summer camp initiated his first profound near-death experience, where a calm detachment allowed him to survive under the water for several minutes. This event imprinted symbolic imagery on him, such as the circle and dot, universal symbols of life, and began shaping his lifelong spiritual journey. Growing up amid strong racial tensions and witnessing the KKK's presence near his family profoundly affected David. The hatred he absorbed fueled an overwhelming, defensive anger that manifested physically and mentally. This anger became a shield, making him difficult and isolated, but also contributing to serious health issues, including digestive problems, high blood pressure, and eventually heart complications. David speaks openly about his youthful existential crisis, his hatred for the world he was born into, and the deep desire to escape this reality, which, he later realized, played a role in several near-death events. Despite these struggles, his mother's love provided a vital protective anchor that helped prevent tragedy in his youth. David recounts the precise moment of his drowning NDE. Unable to swim, but attempting to join others in the water, he sank without panic, guided by a mystical voice advising him to touch the bottom to push back up. Captivated by the rippling water and light above, he describes a serene calmness despite the life-threatening situation. Upon resurfacing, chaos and panic surrounded him as others believed he had died. This early experience introduced him to a voice that would consistently guide and comfort him through trauma and near-death states throughout life. Following the drowning, David experienced vivid and often frightening spiritual phenomena, such as involuntary seizures during which he saw images of Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. These visions blurred lines between reality, memory, and spiritual insight, deeply disturbing his psychological state, yet heightening his quest for clarity. His sensitivity to others' emotions and intentions led to early skepticism and social isolation, causing him to distrust authority and conventional beliefs. Nevertheless, he grounded his mystical experiences by integrating ancient knowledge and remained committed to intellectual inquiry. At age 39, David suffered a severe heart attack caused partly by congenital heart issues, compounded by years of hypertension tied to his emotional state. He describes the physical pain and mental realization of dying as he was rushed to the hospital. During resuscitation, he had a second and far more elaborate near-death experience, witnessing his own body from above and observing medical staff attempting to revive him. Despite the blackness and chaos, he could clearly perceive people's thoughts and emotions in the room, particularly a distraught woman and a man operating the defibrillator, conveying a deep interconnectedness beyond physical form. David recounts his journey beyond the hospital room into an intense black void that was denser than space itself. This void was filled with whispers, images, and responsive energy, characterized by a profound and all-encompassing love that far surpassed earthly experiences. He describes the void as velvet-like and interactive, with his attention shaping what he perceived. Avoiding the pull toward a brilliant white star-like light, which symbolized a cosmic consciousness or source, he preferred exploring the surrounding universe, visiting star nurseries and asteroids, including one that NASA has documented. He interprets these sites through the lens of ancient spiritual symbolism and scientific discoveries, feeling deeply connected to the universal framework described in such ancient texts. David discusses how the near-death experience dissolved his attachments, especially to anger and hatred, and recalibrated his understanding of life cycles, reincarnation, and spiritual agency. He explains that desire and attachment compel souls to return to physical life, and underlines the importance of autonomous conscious choice in reincarnation, contrasting it with cultural suffering cycles like samsara. This understanding reframes death not as an end, but as a transition influenced by individual awareness and unresolved attachments. He challenges rigid religious interpretations of NDEs and supports a more flexible, universal approach to spiritual truth. Despite his spiritual transformation, David faced intense physical challenges after resuscitation, including the trauma of heart surgery and ongoing health issues. The process of recuperation was painful, both physically and emotionally, with a protracted period of depression that lasted several years. He describes the alienation and exhaustion that accompanied relearning how to live and the complex task of integrating cosmic revelations with mundane reality. The ongoing tension between these worlds made social reintegration difficult and extended the time it took him to publicly share his story. A key theme in David's transformation is the shift from chronic hatred to an experience of universal love that relieved his fight-or-flight tendencies encoded in the brain's amygdala. This evolutionary shift reduced anxiety and anger-driven behaviors, fostering empathy and dismantling personal narratives of victimization. He emphasizes that this was not about belief, but about a fundamental rewiring of attention and experience, choosing hopeful and meaningful ideas over hopelessness. He also highlights his ongoing relationship with an inner voice that guides and corrects, now experienced as compassion rather than judgment, fostering continual growth. David reflects on the importance of clarity and grounding in sharing profound spiritual experiences and distinguishes between raw experiences and personal interpretations or beliefs about them. He advocates for humility, openness, and continual learning, refusing to cling to dogma or extremes of certainty. A recurrent insight is that belief is the lowest form of knowing, and that true knowledge requires testing, integration, and ongoing refinement. He also discusses perceptual and cultural filters that shape reality, framing life as a subjective delusion that serves individual and collective needs. When asked about psychedelic experiences, David acknowledges similarities in altered states of consciousness, but stresses the necessity of integration rather than the experience itself. He notes that some people use psychedelics yet remain unchanged in terms of wisdom or behavior. While expressing interest in further exploring psychedelics to better understand their overlap with NDEs, he underscores that lasting transformation depends on orientation and grounding following any such experience. He also draws parallels between spiritual practices, meditation, and plant medicine as techniques for accessing these deeper states of awareness. David describes his life review during the NDE not as an elaborate recounting or judgment, but as an energetic and emotional reconciliation focused on awareness of unmet commitments, broken promises, and pain caused to others. He references themes of reciprocity and grace, feeling the emotional consequences of his actions in a brief but profound moment. This, he believes, serves as a final opportunity to detach from harmful attachments and realign attention towards responsible living, rather than a punitive or fearful reckoning. Throughout the conversation, David interweaves contemporary cosmological insights with ancient spirituality, referencing black holes, star nurseries, and cosmic grids, alongside Gnostic texts, the web of Indra, and symbolic interpretations of God and creation. He perceives the universe as a coherent, interconnected system where everything contains analogical meanings from the micro to the macro. His understanding of God transcends traditional religious portraits, viewing divinity as both everything and nothing, a source beyond human comprehension that is expressed through love and creative energy. He also cautiously discusses the concept of angels or spirit guides as benevolent entities connected through energetic or familial affinities, serving humanity without strict religious framing. David candidly discusses his ongoing journey to embody the lessons from his NDEs, including managing residual triggers, practicing self-awareness, and reorienting his life towards love and away from anger. His son's perception of this transformation, as becoming calmer and more patient, serves as meaningful validation of his progress. David hopes to nurture his son's grounded happiness and intelligence while subtly instilling healthy perspectives on reality, aiming to break free from the patterns of trauma and bitterness that defined his own childhood. He expresses gratitude for this intergenerational healing as a precious legacy of his journey. Although David's near-death experience happened in 2017, he only began sharing it openly around 2020-2021, facilitated by online platforms like the Clubhouse app. Through dialogue with others who had similar experiences, including mystics and scholars, he found a supportive community that helped him interpret and integrate his insights. This process confirmed connections between his experiences and ancient spiritual teachings from multiple cultures, providing him a rich framework that validated his lived realities without forcing belief or dogma. He emphasizes the importance of dialogue, humility, and responsible storytelling in sharing transformative experiences to foster collective understanding rather than division. The hosts and David reflect on the challenges of describing mystical and cosmic experiences using the limitations of human language and cultural concepts. They playfully discuss the difficulty of conveying technological and spiritual realities, underscoring that sometimes subtle differences in word choice obscure shared understanding. This theme of communication barriers echoes the broader difficulties of articulating NDEs, ancient cosmologies, and transcendent insights in ways that are accessible and meaningful to different audiences, while respecting the complexity and mystery of these realities. David situates his experiences within a vast lineage of spiritual thinking, noting that core human concerns, birth, death, reincarnation, spiritual agency, and unity, transcend time and culture. He interprets contemporary scientific findings and mystical visions as modern echoes of ancient teachings, such as those found in Egyptian, Hindu, and Gnostic traditions. He highlights the original intention behind rituals like baptism as symbolic rebirths and purification, connecting them to near-death transitions and spiritual awakenings. This universal thread underscores his belief in a shared human quest for meaning and coherence across historical divides. Finally, David stresses that beyond the mystical and metaphysical, the essence of his message centers on interpersonal compassion and social responsibility. He believes that treating each other better is foundational to healing both individuals and the planet. His own journey from anger and division towards healing models a pathway for others caught in cycles of trauma and hatred. Rejecting fear-based ideologies and divisive storytelling, he encourages focus on commonality and hope as guiding principles for personal and collective transformation.